Hey, sport, that's a nice ride. A little too nice for a kid hanging out on this block.
I'm not hanging out. I'm just getting my gym bag, sir.
Look, don't lie to me. I know what a lookout looks like. Hands on the hood.
I didn't do anything. I have the keys right here in my hand.
That's it. You're resisting. Turn around. You're going for a ride.
My father's Judge Vance. You arrest me, you lose your badge.
Amari Mitchell froze with his gym bag, half-zipped keys clinking in his fingers, sunlight bouncing off the black SUV like it was trying to blind the argument before it started. The voice came from a man in uniform standing too close, shoulders squared like a door that only swung one way. Why, Amari asked, keeping his hands visible, palms open. What's the reason? Because you're acting like a lookout, the officer snapped. And that car is way too nice for a kid like you in this neighborhood. Right then, the threat was simple, and immediate cuffs concrete a ride he didn't ask for. The accusation was already locked and suspicious lookout doesn't belong, and within days that claim would collapse in a way Elias Bishop never saw coming. Amari swallowed hard. His throat went dry the way it did before a hard set at the gym, the way it did before he had to speak up in rooms where people expected him to shrink. He forced his voice down steady. Am I being detained, or am I free to leave? Elias Bishop didn't answer the question. He stepped closer, angling his body so Amari's path between the SUV and the curb narrowed to almost nothing. Don't play games. Hands on the hood. Amari shifted one foot back, instinct not defiance, then stopped aware that any sudden move would be narrated into something else. I'm not resisting, he said. I'm asking the reason. I have the keys. What the officer didn't know was that 3 phones were already recording. A woman near the mailboxes had lifted hers without drama, and a delivery driver at the corner had done the same, his camera steady as a tripod. Elias's head tilted a fraction, like he'd felt the temperature in the air change. He did the thing authority figures do when they realize they're being watched. He talked louder, not clearer. You people always have an excuse, he said, tone policing baked into every syllable. You want to argue, you can argue in cuffs. The line landed clean, captionable and sharp 8 words that sounded like policy but felt like contempt. It would come back later, word for word. Amari held the keys up higher, the black fob catching the light. I'm taking my bag. My ID is in my wallet. Please state the reason. Elias's hand hovered near his belt, not drawing anything yet, but making the idea of it present. Reason is, you match what I'm looking for. Now turn around. Amari's shoulders tightened. He could feel heat crawl up his neck, the kind that threatened to make him talk too fast. He forced a breath through his nose. I'm requesting a supervisor. Elias's jaw twitched. Supervisor isn't going to change the standards out here. A micro-turn hit. Fast Elias lifted his radio and keyed it, eyes still on Amari. Dispatch, send me a unit. Possible vehicle break-in subject is refusing commands. Amari blinked. I'm not refusing. I'm asking why. I have the keys. Hands on the hood, Elias repeated, as if repetition could turn a wrong call into a right one. The phones stayed up. The witnesses didn't crowd, didn't shout. They formed what looked like nothing and felt like everything, a loose ring of calm people who kept their distance, narrated what they saw, and refused to let the moment be rewritten later. He's got keys in his hand, the delivery driver said. Voice even. He asked why. A second micro-turn came quick. Elias moved his body to block Amari's driver's side door, completely cutting off access, like the car itself was evidence he needed to confiscate. You live here, Elias demanded. Amari nodded toward the nearest building, a row of tidy units with identical balconies. Yes, I'm parked here. I'm going to the gym before work. Elias's eyes flicked to Amari's hoodie, then to the SUV, then back to Amari's face like he was searching for a reason that could survive daylight. That's a lot of car, for he stopped himself halfway, then pushed forward anyway. For someone like you. Amari didn't rise to it. Please state the reason, he said again. I don't consent to a search. Elias let out a short laugh. Small, hard, practiced. Consent? You think you're in a courtroom? That was the humiliation trigger that pulled Amari's mind backward for a second, not into a speech, not into a lecture, but into the routine that had made him who he was. He'd learned to keep receipts in ordinary life, screenshots of schedules, copies of parking passes, text threads confirming shifts, simple proof. Because he'd watched people he loved get doubted over and over, he was the one in his friend group who always said, save it. Don't delete it. Not paranoia practice. Amari's hand trembled slightly around the keys. He hated that it trembled. I'm not trying to fight, he said. I'm trying to go to the gym. You don't get to decide what you're doing, Elias said. I do. A third micro-turn, Elias reached out and grabbed Amari's wrist firm, controlling just enough force to make the threat physical without turning it into a headline yet. Amari flinched and immediately went still. I'm not resisting. he said louder now so the phones could hear. Please don't touch me. I'm requesting a supervisor. He's not resisting the woman by the mailboxes, said still recording. You grabbed him. Elias didn't release. He pivoted, trying to guide Amari toward the hood like he was repositioning furniture. Stop pulling away, he ordered. I'm not pulling, Amari said through clenched teeth. You're pulling me. That was the moment it turned from suspicion to control. Elias shoved Amari's palm against the SUV's hood, flattening it like a stamp. Other hand. Amari complied, slow, deliberate. He placed his other hand down, fingers spread, keys still visible, because he refused to let the only obvious proof vanish into a pocket where Elias could pretend it never existed. Elias leaned in close enough that Amari could smell coffee and mint. Where'd you steal it from? Amari's breath caught. I didn't steal anything. That's my car. Sure it is, Elias said. People come through here all the time casing nice vehicles. You think I'm stupid? Amari stared at the hood, the paint so clean it reflected his face in a warped oval. His mouth tasted like metal. Please state the reason, he said again, voice shaking now despite his effort. I'm asking if I'm free to leave. Elias ignored the question with a precision that felt trained. He shifted behind Amari, one hand on Amari's shoulder, the other hovering near the cuffs. You're being detained until I figure out what's going on. A fourth micro-turn, a second patrol car rolled into the lot, tires crunching. The presence of another unit didn't calm Elias. It amplified him. He straightened like he'd been given an audience. The new officer stepped out, younger eyes scanning the scene, then pausing on the phones held high. What's going on? She asked. Possible theft, Elias said immediately. Subject's uncooperative. Amari turned his head as far as he could without moving his hands. I'm cooperative, he said. I have keys. I asked for the reason. I requested a supervisor. The second officer looked at the keys. He has keys, she said carefully. Elias's face tightened and he pushed his narrative harder. Keys don't mean anything. People steal keys. The delivery driver's voice stayed calm, witness style. He walked straight from the building with that bag. He didn't run. He didn't hide. Elias glared at the driver like calmness was a threat. Stay back. We are back, the woman replied, still steady. We're just recording. Elias's hand finally found the cuffs. The metal made a quiet, unmistakable sound, an object entering the story that changed everything. Amari's stomach dropped. Sir, he said, voice cracking, just slightly, please. I'm not resisting. I don't consent. I want a supervisor. Elias brought the cuffs into view. You want to argue, you can argue in cuffs. Amari heard it like a slap. The witnesses heard it like a stamp. The phones captured it like a receipt. A fifth micro-turn, a man in a button-down stepped out of the driver's seat of the SUV, older salt and pepper hair posture controlled. He'd been in the car the whole time, watching through the windshield. Now he moved with the quiet authority of someone who knew exactly how escalation worked and exactly how to interrupt it. Officer, the man called, hands raised slightly in a non-threatening gesture. Can we slow down? Elias didn't look away from Amari. Sir, get back in the vehicle. The man stopped a few feet away. That's my son, he said. He's telling you the truth. Elias's head snapped toward him. Your son? Yes, the man said. And I'm asking you to explain why you're detaining him. Elias's eyes flicked between father and son, then back to the SUV like it had personally insulted him. Because he's suspicious. That's not a reason, the man said. That's an opinion. Amari's shoulders trembled under Elias's grip. He hated that his body betrayed the fear he was forcing down. He spoke anyway. Dad, he said, please call. Elias cut him off. Don't you tell him what to do. The father's gaze sharpened. My name is Quentin Torres, he said. I'm a federal judge. He didn't say it like a threat. He said it like a fact that should have changed the officer's behavior long before it ever mattered who Quentin Torres was. A sixth micro-turn, Elias's grip loosened for half a second, just a fraction like his brain had to re-render the scene with new information. Then his ego snapped it back into place. Good for you, Elias, said, voice hardening. Doesn't mean your son gets special treatment. Quentin didn't flinch. I'm not asking for special treatment, he said. I'm asking for lawful treatment. Explain the reason. Verify the keys. Verify the registration. That's all. Elias smiled without warmth. What I'm not going to do is have you and your son run this stop. The second officer shifted uncomfortably. Her eyes darted again to the phones and back to Elias. Maybe we should verify first, she offered, cautious. Elias's voice dropped low, controlling. I'm handling it. And there, it was the internal split beginning to show. Not everyone in uniform wanted what Elias wanted. Amari's backstory came in a second quick insert triggered by the word special. Amari had grown up learning he'd be accused of wanting special treatment when all he wanted was equal breathing room. He had a routine with his community, helping his neighbor carry groceries on Thursdays, coaching his little cousin's weekend drills at the park, returning packages left at the wrong door. People knew him as the guy who waved first, who held doors, who showed up. He wasn't famous. He was consistent, and consistency is what profiling tries to erase. Elias snapped the cuff onto Amari's right wrist. The metal clicked like a closing mouth. Amari gasped, then forced his voice out loud enough for the circle. "I'm not resisting," he said. "You're arresting me without telling me why." Quentin's tone sharpened. "Officer, stop." Elias yanked Amari's arm back. "Stop interfering," he warned Quentin. "You step closer, you're next." A seventh micro-turn, the woman by the mailboxes took one step forward, not toward Elias, but toward the space between Quentin and the curb, like she was anchoring him, keeping him from doing something protective that would be misread. "Sir," she said to Quentin, "calm and low, don't move, let us record." Quentin nodded, once eyes locked on his son, jaw clenched like stone. He pulled his phone from his pocket with a controlled motion. "I'm calling a supervisor," he said aloud. Elias's head turned sharply. "You will not." Quentin held the screen up so the witnesses could see the call connecting. "I'm calling the precinct," he said. "I'm requesting a supervisor." That simple act changed the air. Elias couldn't isolate Amari anymore. The story had extra authors now. A documentary anchor slipped into the scene without fanfare. Amari glanced up and saw the small body-worn camera on Elias's chest, its indicator lit. The presence of that camera plane visible meant Elias's words weren't just intimidation. They were a record. Elias's eyes flicked to his own camera like he'd just remembered it existed. Then he doubled down the way people do when they sense accountability approaching. "He's being arrested for obstruction," he said, as if naming it made it real. "And you can take that up with whoever you want." Amari's heart hammered so hard his vision narrowed. "What did I obstruct?" he demanded. "I asked the reason. I asked if I was free to leave." Elias snapped the second cuff onto Amari's left wrist. "You obstructed me doing my job." The second officer took a half step forward. "Elias," she said quietly, "do we have the registration yet?" Elias cut her off. "Not now." A small imperfection hit, the kind that causes real consequences. Quentin's call to the precinct had bad reception in the lot. He turned, took 2 steps towards the building to get signal, and in that half movement, Elias reacted like it was defiance. "Get back!" Elias barked, hand lifting. Quentin stopped instantly, palms open. "I'm stepping to get reception," he said. "I'm not approaching you." "Sir, you're escalating," the delivery driver narrated. He stopped. Elias's face flushed. He was losing control of the narrative in real time, and it showed in the way he started issuing commands faster than anyone could comply. "Both of you shut up," Elias snapped at the witnesses. "Back away or you'll be cited." "We're already back," the woman replied. "We're not interfering." A micro-turn, Elias reached for Amari's gym bag with his free hand. "I don't consent," Amari said immediately. "That's my property." Elias ignored him, fingers digging into the strap. The bag jolted, zipper rasping. "Don't," Quentin said, voice suddenly edged. "Don't do that." Elias looked up, eyes hard. "Watch your tone, Judge. Standards apply to everyone." That was the coded framing standards order control standing in for what he didn't want to say out loud, and the witnesses heard it exactly as it was. The second officer's voice tightened. "Elias, hold up." Elias didn't. He tipped the bag, spilling a pair of lifting straps, a shaker bottle, a folded work polo, and a laminated parking tag from Amari's complex that slid across the pavement. Amari stared at his things like they'd been stripped off him. His face burned. "That's my stuff," he said, swallowing anger. "You're humiliating me." Quentin's knuckles whitened around his phone. He kept his feet planted because the circle had held him there, and he spoke into the call again. "I need a supervisor. Now. An officer is arresting my son without cause." This time the call connected. Quentin put it on speaker, keeping his voice controlled. "This is Judge Torres. I'm at 7713 Fairview Lane in Donaldson. I'm requesting a supervisor to respond." Elias heard it, and for the first time his posture shifted just slightly. It wasn't fear, it was calculation. A ninth micro-turn, Elias tried to pivot to optics. "He's resisting," he said louder for the speakerphone, for the phones, for the future report he was already drafting in his head. Amari went very still and spoke like a metronome. "I am not resisting. My hands are cuffed behind me. I am standing still." "He's not resisting," the woman echoed immediately. He asked why. The delivery driver added calm, "You cuffed him first. You didn't verify anything." Elias's eyes flashed. "You're interfering with an investigation." "No," the driver said. "I'm witnessing." By now the witness circle wasn't loud. It was worse than loud. It was consistent. A 10th micro-turn, Elias tugged Amari toward the patrol car. The cuffs pulled at Amari's shoulders, forcing him to stumble. "Careful," the second officer blurted, reflexive. Amari caught himself breath-sharp. "My shoulder," he said, voice strained. "Please." Elias didn't slow. He wanted movement, because movement could be described later as aggression. Quentin took one step, only one, then stopped when the woman by the mailboxes lightly touched his elbow. "Stay," she murmured, not ordering him, anchoring him. "Let the phones do the work." Quentin's eyes shone with fury, held under glass. He nodded once, then raised his own phone higher. A second imperfection, one of the witness videos glitched for a moment audio, cutting out as the phone switched from camera to low power mode. The woman cursed softly under her breath, then restarted it, hands shaking. It didn't erase what happened, but it created a gap that Elias would later try to exploit. Amari was pressed against the patrol car's trunk. Elias patted him down quickly, rougher than necessary, hands searching pockets. "I don't consent," Amari said again, voice hoarse. "Please state the reason." Elias leaned in. "Reason is, I said so," he muttered, then caught himself, then raised his voice again like he'd never said it. "You're under arrest for obstruction." The near loss hit before halfway, the way it hits in real life, not cinematic, just terrifyingly procedural. Elias opened the back door of the patrol car. He angled Amari's head down with his palm like this was routine. Amari's stomach clenched. He could feel panic flicker in his chest like a bad electrical connection. "Please," he said, "I'm not resisting. I want a supervisor." Elias shoved him into the seat. Amari's knee banged the door frame pane, blooming. The door slammed. The sound cut through the lot like punctuation. Quentin's voice went low and deadly into the speakerphone. "My son is in the back of your officer's car," he said. "I want a supervisor on scene immediately." A voice crackled back, dispatch professional cautious. "Sir, units are en route. Please remain calm." Quentin's laugh was short and humorless. "Calm," he said. "You have an officer escalating a situation with cameras pointed at him." Elias stood by the rear door, arms crossed now, as if the arrest had proven something. He looked at the witnesses with a warning in his eyes. "You can all go," he said. "Nothing to see." No one moved. The second officer stood a few feet away, hands at her sides, face tight. She looked at Quentin and then at Elias like she was watching a slow collision. "Elias," she said quietly, "we should run the plate." Elias snapped, "It's already done." She didn't believe him. Everyone could hear it in the silence that followed. A micro turn. Quentin spoke directly to Elias through the open air, not the call. "Officer Bishop," he said, reading the name tag like a judge reads a witness. "Do you understand that you're being recorded by multiple people right now?" Elias's eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm stating a fact," Quentin replied. "This stops now." Elias leaned in toward Quentin, voice dropping to a hiss that still carried. "You don't get to order me around because of your title." Quentin didn't blink. "I'm not ordering you around. I'm ordering you to treat my son like a citizen." The witness circle shifted subtly, tightening, not crowding, but aligning a human geometry that said, "We saw it, we're here, we won't let you rewrite it." Then a new sound cut in tires, a heavier engine, a vehicle arriving with purpose. A sergeant's SUV pulled into the lot, stopping hard. A man stepped out, Sergeant Nolan Sutton, older, broad-shouldered eyes, already scanning faces. Phone's body language. He didn't stroll. He arrived. "What's happening?" Sutton asked, voice flat with authority. Elias snapped to attention like a performer caught mid-act. "Sergeant I arrested a suspect obstructing possible vehicle theft." Sutton's eyes flicked to the black SUV, then to Quentin's calm rage, then to the witnesses. "Possible theft," he repeated slowly. "Based on what?" Elias started fast. He was lurking, acting like a lookout car doesn't fit. Refused commands. Sutton held up a hand. "Stop," he said. One word, and the lot quieted. He pointed at the witnesses. "Who has video?" All three phones stayed up. Sutton nodded once. "Good," he said. "Don't stop recording." Elias stiffened. This was the moment it turned. Not because Sutton was a hero, because Sutton was accountable to risk to truth to what happens when a bad arrest becomes a liability that burns everyone. Sutton looked at Quentin. "Surname." "Quentin Torres," Quentin said. "That's my son in the back of the car. He had keys in his hand. He asked why he was being detained. Your officer cuffed him anyway." Sutton's gaze snapped to Elias. "Keys." Elias waved it off. "Could be stolen." Sutton didn't raise his voice. That made it scarier. "Did you verify the registration?" Elias's mouth opened. Nothing came out clean. The second officer spoke up finally. "Sergeant I asked about registration. It wasn't verified before he was cuffed." Elias whipped his head toward her. "Stay in your lane." Sutton stared at Elias like he'd just said the quiet part out loud. "She's in her lane," Sutton said. "You're the one drifting." Sutton walked to the patrol car and opened the rear door. Amari looked up, wrists aching behind him, breathing shallow. His face was flushed, eyes bright with anger he was still holding down. Sutton crouched slightly so he wasn't towering. "Sir," he said to Amari, "are you okay? Any injuries?" Amari swallowed. "My knee," he said. "And my shoulder." "I'm not resisting." I asked why. Sutton nodded once. "I hear you." Then Sutton stood and turned back to Elias. "Why did you arrest him?" Elias pointed at Amari like an exhibit. "Obstruction." He was refusing to comply. Amari's voice came out firm despite the tremble. "I complied," he said. "I asked if I was free to leave. I asked for the reason. I requested a supervisor." A documentary anchor landed clean inside the scene. Sutton gestured at the second officer. "Run the plate and registration right now," he said. She keyed her radio, and the call was plainly logged through dispatch as she repeated the plate aloud. Elias's nostrils flared. "Sergeant," Sutton cut him off. "You talk after we verify." The dispatch response came back quickly, calm and decisive. The SUV was registered to Quentin Torres. The address matched the complex. The insurance was active. The system didn't care about Elias's opinion. It cared about facts. Silence fell like a blanket. Phones stayed up. Nobody spoke. Even the wind seemed to back away. Elias stood with his mouth slightly open, eyes flicking left and right, as if searching for a new story to live in. This was the freeze moment. Truth landed, and the lot went quiet enough to hear breathing. Sutton turned to Elias. "Open the door," he said. Elias didn't move. The refusal wasn't dramatic. It was the tiny rebellion of a man losing face. Sutton's voice lowered. "Open the door. Now." Elias's hand twitched. Then he stepped forward and opened the rear door. Sutton reached in carefully and uncuffed Amari, one wrist at a time. He kept his body between Amari and Elias like a shield without announcing it. "Stand up slow," Sutton said. "Take your time." Amari stood flexing his hands, wrists red. He rolled his shoulders, slightly wincing. His eyes cut to Elias. "You didn't even check," he said, voice low. Elias snapped, trying to reclaim authority. "You're lucky your daddy is who he is." Quentin's head turned sharply. "Say that again," he demanded. Sutton's gaze hardened. "Officer Bishop," he said, "you're done talking." Elias bristled. "Sergeant, he was suspicious." Sutton didn't let him. "Suspicious isn't a crime," Sutton said. He looked at the witnesses. "You all saw an arrest made before verification. I need statements." The witness circle didn't celebrate. They shifted into a different mode, solidarity with paperwork. The woman by the mailboxes lowered her phone slightly, hands still trembling. "I'll give a statement," she said. He asked why. "You never explained." The delivery driver nodded. "Me too," he said. And I got the line where he said, Elias cut in voice sharp, "Don't twist my words." Sutton's eyes snapped to Elias. "You want to argue, you can argue in cuffs." The exact phrase came back like a boomerang, spoken flat, not mocking, just recorded reality, repeated by someone with rank. Elias went still, his face drained. The witnesses heard it. The second officer heard it. Quentin heard it. Amari heard it. And for a moment, Elias looked like he'd been forced to listen to himself for the first time. Sutton turned to Quentin. "Sir, I'm going to separate my officer from this scene," he said. "I'm also going to request a watch commander to respond." Quentin nodded once. "Thank you," he said, voice tight. "I want this preserved. I want statements. I want accountability." Sutton didn't promise miracles. "We'll handle it stepwise," he said. "Right now your son gets medical checked if needed, and we document injuries." Amari flexed his knee, pain sharp. "I'm okay," he said automatically, then stopped himself. He remembered the way people like him were trained to minimize harm to make others comfortable. He looked at Sutton. "Actually, my knee hurts. And my wrists." Sutton nodded. "We'll get you checked," he said. "You're not in trouble." Elias took one step back, anger flickering again. "So we just let people run around in stolen cars now?" Sutton turned his full body toward Elias. "You didn't verify," he said. "You escalated in front of witnesses. You cuffed first and explained later." He paused. "And you made it about who fits." Elias's lips pressed tight. "I was maintaining control." Sutton's reply was quiet. "No," he said. "You were maintaining ego." A new micro-turn, another vehicle arrived, Lieutenant Victoria Stanton, watch commander, stepping out with a clipboard, and the kind of calm that meant the institution had entered the scene. She looked at Quentin, then at Amari's wrists, then at Elias. "Sergeant Sutton," she said. "Brief me." Sutton spoke in short lines, factual. "Arrest made pre-verification, Multiple witnesses recording. Registered owner present. Injuries reported. Stanton's eyes narrowed. Officer Bishop, she said. Your body camera is on. Elias hesitated. Yes. Stanton's voice turned clinical. Do not turn it off, she said. Do not discuss the incident with witnesses. You're being removed from duty pending review. Elias's face reddened. Pending review. For doing my job. Stanton didn't argue. For how you did it, she said. Quentin stepped closer, careful staying outside the invisible boundary Sutton had set. Lieutenant, he said, this began with a comment about the car being too nice for my son. Stanton's eyes sharpened. I'll hear witness statements, she said, and I'll review the footage. The second officer cleared her throat, voice small but firm. Ma'am, she said, I advised verification before cuffs. Stanton nodded once, noted. Elias turned on her. You're throwing me under. Stanton's voice cut like a blade. Stop, she said. You will not intimidate another officer on this scene. That was the institutional backbone taking shape, not a single savior, but roles aligning sergeant-lieutenant dispatch witnesses' everyday records, closing the gaps where abuse hides. A micro-turn Stanton handed Sutton the clipboard. Written statements, she said. Names and contact information. We preserve recordings offered voluntarily. Sutton looked at the witnesses. If you're willing, he said, I'll take your contact and you can send your video. No one is required to, but it helps. The witnesses nodded. The delivery driver spoke first. I'll send mine, he said. I want it on record. The woman nodded, swallowing. Me too, she said. I'm tired of watching this happen. Amari stood with his gym bag gathered back together, hands shaking as he stuffed the lifting straps inside. He looked at the spilled items, then at Elias, then at the phones. He felt his chest tighten again, not just fear now, but something like grief. Quentin stepped beside him. You did everything right, he said quietly. Amari's voice was rough. It didn't feel like it mattered, he said. Quentin looked at the witness circle. It mattered, he said. They made it matter. Stanton approached Amari with measured respect. Sir, she said, you are not under arrest. You are free to go. If you want medical, we can call it. Amari nodded. I want it documented, he said, surprising himself with the steadiness in his voice. My knee hit the door. My wrists hurt. Stanton nodded. Understood, she said. We'll document. Elias stood off to the side, now arms rigid. Radio quiet, face tight with the first dawning fear of consequences that aren't dramatic, but are permanent files, reviews, supervisors' patterns. Over the next hours, the scene became paperwork and processed the parts of justice that aren't cinematic, but are real. Statements were collected. Dispatch logs were preserved. The body camera footage was secured. The second officer wrote her account. Quentin didn't leverage his title to demand a spectacle. He leveraged it to demand procedure, the same thing everyone should be allowed to demand. He contacted the department's legal counsel through appropriate channels, not to punish out of spite, but to ensure preservation and compliance. The request wasn't ruin him, it was don't bury this. In the days that followed, the story didn't spread because of a viral edit alone. It spread because the receipts matched. The witness videos aligned with the body camera. Elias's own words lined up with his conduct. His captionable line, his attempt to weaponize cuffs as a debate tool, appeared in review discussions exactly as it had been spoken. Inside the department, there was friction. One side wanted it quiet, an apology, a note, a misunderstanding. Another side, led by risk management voices and command staff who understood exposure, and ethics wanted it correct. That split mattered. It forced the institution to choose what kind of backbone it had. The result wasn't instant or theatrical. It was stepwise documented and earned. Elias Bishop was placed under internal investigation. He was removed from patrol pending findings. His incident report was scrutinized against video and witness statements. Supervisors reviewed his prior stops for pattern, not fishing, just checking. Amari, meanwhile, had to live with the body memory of the arrest, the slam of the door, the scrape of cuffs the moment his breath went shallow. He still went to the gym, but he noticed how his hands shook on the steering wheel for the first few drives. He still went to work, but he caught himself scanning parking lots like they were traps. Quentin insisted on one thing that mattered more than vengeance, a written clearing of Amari's name. He didn't want his son carrying a stain that existed only because an officer needed to win an argument. The department provided it. A letter confirming there was no lawful basis for the arrest, as executed that Amari was not charged, that his record would reflect it. It wasn't a trophy. It was oxygen. Elias, confronted with the review and the footage, and the witnesses, tried once more to frame himself as the victim of standards. He claimed he'd been disrespected, that the community didn't understand policing, that the judge's involvement made it political. Then the boomerang landed for the last time. In a meeting with command staff present, the watch commander repeated Elias's own line back into the room, flat and cold. "You want to argue, you can argue in cuffs," she said. "That is not de-escalation. That is retaliation." Elias had no answer that fit. His employment ended not with handcuffs, not with a dramatic perp walk, but with a termination process grounded in documented conduct, corroborated accounts, and an incident that exposed a pattern of escalation and selective proof rejection. Amari didn't celebrate. He exhaled. There's a difference. He stood in the same parking lot weeks later, gym bag on his shoulder, keys in his hand, and noticed something he hadn't noticed before. Neighbors who used to glance away now looked him in the eye. The woman from the mailboxes waved first. The delivery driver gave a small nod like a promise kept. The institution didn't transform overnight, and nobody pretended it did. But in this one moment, caught on cameras held by witnesses, forced into procedure, solidarity met backbone and dignity, won without needing a miracle. Amari started the engine, pulled out, and drove to the gym. He was still angry. He was still tired. But he wasn't alone in it anymore. First, if an authority figure stops you and starts issuing commands without explanation, keep your voice calm and ask plain questions like, "What's the reason?" and "Am I free to leave?" Because clarity forces the moment into a record instead of a rumor. Next, if you feel the situation tipping, request a supervisor early and say out loud, "I'm not resisting," since those words help witnesses narrate accurately and help recordings capture your intent. Then if it's safe, let calm bystanders form a witness circle. Phones up distance kept simple narration like he asked why or he's not resisting, because quiet consistency is harder to dismiss than yelling. After that, don't minimize pain or injuries. Ask for medical help or documentation in plain language, so the aftermath doesn't become a debate about what really happened. Finally, follow up through official channels, complaint processes, requests to preserve footage, written confirmations, because stepwise institutional action is how accountability becomes real instead of symbolic. Some elements are selectively fictionalized for education.